If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to Why Write. Hi, welcome back to Why Write. I'm your host, Angela Grout, and I thank you for tuning in to another episode of Why Write. This is a show where you can learn how to write your story, because I have some great guests that come on who are experienced writers, published writers of all genres, and as they share their story of how they wrote their story, it's going to help you to get yours down. So again, thanks for joining Why Write, and today our episode is really going to be about writing for lots of things, because my guest Shane Robitaille is here, and not only has he written a wonderful novel called ROCKIT CREW, which is the adventures of teenage hip-hop music, but he's also having this transformed into a movie. So not only has he written prose for a book, but he's also helping to write a script. So we're going to talk to him about that and how successful this book has been worldwide, not only in this softcover format, but also on Kindle and on Audible. So let me tell you a little bit about Shane. I will tell you, he's written 2 collections of poetry books, and one is called Punk Rock Soul, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about Punk Rock Soul, because he has a poem in there that actually was made into a song and made into a music video. So this is going to be really exciting to hear from him today. So who knows, maybe the story you have in your head might just become a music video too. So I want to welcome Shane to the show.
Thank you.
And hi, how are you?
Excellent. And thank you for inviting me.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. So, this ROCKIT CREW book, I, first was introduced to it when I first met you.
Yes.
Which is going back
2021 maybe?
Yeah, I'm going to say 5 years or so. We are writers together at the Write Up Springfield group, which is a support group for writers, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And, it was exciting to find out that, you were at the end of publishing a book when I was, almost at
Yes, that's right. I was test driving some chapters.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
And, hearing this book, which isn't, well, it is a memoir. I mean, it's definitely
I say
memoir.
It's 85% reality, 15% fiction.
They do say, like, in memoir writing, 100%, they say everything in a memoir is true except for what isn't.
Exactly. Right.
And, as a writer, we can, whether we embellish things or...
You control the universe.
We control it, exactly. So, this is a book that's set in the 1984, which, great years, great music. And, how did you start writing this? So, did you come up with... was this a dream? Like, I'm going to write a book about my teen years?
No, actually it started, a friend of mine he had a film school for kids. And he just asked me if I could write him some short scripts, like less than 5 minutes long, action sequences for kids that were going to this film school. So I'm like, okay, this was before I wrote ROCKIT CREW. And so I started writing, I just started remembering when I was like 14, 15 years old, some of the crazy adventures. And so I started just writing these short scripts for him. And then that turned into me writing some short stories and then one day I thought, you know what, I've got to do something with all of these disconnected stories. And that's when I started writing my first novel, which is ROCKIT CREW. So that was an exercise in connecting all these short stories together in a cohesive way. And kind of the rest is history.
So I totally understand this, because I know in writing, especially in writing April Rain, I would start having all these different little scattered stories. And some of it did start off as like memoir pieces for me of, where I was when I heard terrible news or, different things. And then you end up with all these like pieces.
Yes.
And it's like, how do you put them into a novel form? Because, whether I assume most of them are written in first person.
It's all first person.
Yeah. So how did you, take your 17 little...
That's a great question.
Notes and Post-it notes and papers and...
Great question. So first of all, I had to step back and eat my own dog food, because what I always tell writers or aspiring poets is, before you write the story, try to make sure that it's a story worth telling and a story worth remembering. So I had to kind of say, okay, well, what is the story? What's the story that I want to tell? What's the thing that's burning a hole in my soul that I would need to get out? And once I can contain that, that was the first thing. It starts here and it ends there. And it's not a memoir because I wanted the liberation of a novel and fiction. So I didn't actually use all those short stories at the end of the day. I didn't have to, didn't need to.
I understand that too, because sometimes the writing through something gets you to the next idea that's gonna move it forward. And I can totally resonate with that, because doing my murder mystery April Rain, finding out what the story that's worth remembering was surprising to me.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was about, who killed Jessica Briggs? I mean, obviously we want to know who killed her.
Yes.
And it was inspired by an unsolved mystery, and we all wanted to know who kills this girl. But in the end, I find out it's about telling the truth and coming forward with your truth, and not withholding, not necessarily information, but just being truthful. Because, like the whole going back to Adam and Eve, like, who was the first sinner? Who caused the first sin, know?
Well, it's interesting. You're right. And, so, the protagonist in ROCKIT CREW, his name is Jimmy, who's me. And so when I started writing it and when I finished writing it, I thought, well, this is a story through Jimmy's eyes, But what it's turned out to be, what I've learned since it was published, is there's another character in the story who is he's talked about more than any other character, and that was never my intention. And his story and his journey has resonated more with people than I ever thought.
And what's his name?
John. So it's John's character. Yeah.
It's interesting because I worked with someone doing a screenwriting class to turn April Rain into a script, so we're going to talk about yours. Yes. But in doing that, I learned that my main character wasn't Jessica Briggs.
Yes.
It's the murder of Jessica Briggs. And here, as you're saying, Jimmy's the main character, I'm thinking Jessica's the main character. But there's this other strong character.
That's right.
Victoria, that turns out she really is the protagonist. And I'm like, wow, I didn't see that. Yeah. Now I see it.
Well, when I started getting serious about making this a novel, I actually went back and did some research, and I actually talked to some of the parents of some of the characters who are now, these parents are now in their 70s, but back then were, early middle age. It was amazing. And they showed me pictures that I didn't know existed. They remembered things from 1984 that when I was 14 or 15, I forgot. So it was time well spent. But what I learned in my conversations with them is that this is really a story about this group of people. It's a love letter to a time gone by that's never coming back, and it's that very short period of our lives where your friends and the music that you love are the most important things in your universe. It's like it's an elixir for bad times.
Yeah,
and so,
it definitely transports you to 1984.
Yeah, and
meeting you and your groups of friends.
Yeah, absolutely. So I try to ensure that all of the first of all, unlike a lot of things, I wanted to reflect 1984 in a authentic way, not a cheesy way, which sometimes we see today. When you see movies or
and people dress up and they got the girl with the big hair and the Aquanet,
and not everybody was like that.
And it's kind of silly,
That's right. And I also wanted to make sure that each of these characters was treated with respect and authenticity. And I think that's one of the challenges.
And the characters are based on some of your friends.
They're all based on some of my friends.
Some have passed away.
Yeah.
And using their likeness in a story that's now fictional, it's something that I feel like some writers want to say, oh, do you need permissions? Like, how do you get the permission to write from that point of view, or to share that? And like you said, you went and talked with some of the parents, and how did they feel? Did they feel like, oh no, you're violating
I never heard that
privacy?
Once.
No, they
never
were
heard it
honored.
once. Yeah, absolutely. And and the other thing here is, and that's again, it's why I didn't write a memoir. It's not it's not a memoir. I wanted some flexibility with some of these characters. Somebody asked me once, what's the how much of the novel is right on and how much veers into fiction? And I said it's like an 85%, 15% split. And that 15% is sort of like the magic pixie dust that you sprinkle into the story. And the 15% represents, let me take a quick step back. Last week or 30 years ago, did you ever like go to sleep at night and think about your day?
Oh.
And you say to yourself, boy, maybe I should have said this.
Yeah.
Or what
I
if,
wished you could do it over.
or yeah, well, you know, when I met, you know, her, I met him, or we did this, maybe I should have said yes instead of no. Or maybe I should have done this or should have done that. So that 15% of fiction in this story is what I wished could have happened and should have happened. So when you sprinkle that magic pixie dust, because you control the universe when you're writing a novel, I took situations and transformed them into a story that I wished we had the guts to
100%.
do. But when you're 14 and 15 years old, you don't necessarily.
Right.
And that's the magic of writing a novel.
Yeah, it's very magical because I think whatever genre you're writing, you're always going to pull from your own experiences. And when we pull from our own experiences, especially working with fiction, you have that magic pixie dust to say, you know, oh, I'm going to write a book about that high school boyfriend and we're going to fall in love and get married and have, you know.
Right,
and
because
it's like,
I said yes.
Yes.
Or I said no. You know, whatever it is. But we don't, in real life, we rarely get a retake.
Yeah.
And so my hope, and I think I've achieved it with this, is finding a balance between the real world and fiction.
Yeah, no, definitely. You know, when I wrote my first book, An Angel's Journey, I kind of went through that, like, is it a memoir? Is it fiction? Is it, and, you know, there definitely is memoir pieces in there, but of course, you know, it's the story of a girl's journey into the afterlife. I mean, you know, that it becomes more of the pixie dust stuff because even though we, you know, a lot of people believe in that, I believe in that, but it's just a matter of showing that side and, you know, being creative to be able to tell a story like that. And
absolutely.
it's really fun.
Absolutely.
So how long did it take you to write the book? Let's talk about that quickly.
So from the time that I said, okay, I'm going to write a novel, to the time that it was ready for publication was, I don't know, probably 12, 15 months.
Okay. Wow, that's...
And 80% of that I wrote on Monday nights. So my Monday night was cherished. I protected it.
Yeah.
So I always say to writers or aspiring writers, it's one thing to find the time, make the time to actually write, but then you have to protect it.
Yeah.
You have to say, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing this. So about 80% was written on Monday nights for 12
I mean, that's one of the
months.
great things about having writers groups and like when we go to Springfield Write Up, you know, you carve out that time and you're like, okay, this time is with my muse or whatever you want to call it, the inspiration, and I'm just going to, you know, write this chapter. I've gone in several times, you know, with knowing what I need to write and say, okay, today I'm tackling this.
That's
you know,
right.
I might look over my notes and it's like, okay, now I'm writing this. Of course, there's other times we sit down, and even on your Monday nights, I'm sure, like, sometimes you're like, oh, I'm writing something that doesn't have anything to do with this.
It'd be 20 minutes one night, and then be 6 hours the next night.
But you're still writing. You're exercising the muscle.
That's
you're
right.
Keeping it going.
That's right. And that was especially true when I was doing the screenplay.
Yeah, so great transition there, because I do want to say, like, so you've written this, it's about 16, 18 months done, get the little baby in your hand.
Yep.
Now, you know, we're marketing it and things like that, but did you know you wanted to make this into a film?
So my dream as a teenager was to go to film school and make films.
Okay.
So if you look at my high school yearbook from class of 1989, hashtag best decade ever, you'll see in my yearbook from friends and teachers, see you in the movies, see you on the big screen, et cetera, et cetera.
Here we come.
So, yeah. And so I didn't write it knowing that I wanted it to be a feature film, but I guess I wrote it through the lens of a director.
Yeah.
You know? And so a lot of the feedback that I hear from readers and listeners is it feels cinematic.
Yeah.
I could picture it on, like, it's the number one thing that I hear from readers.
So you really put
this should be
the reader
on.
in the environment.
Yes.
You're like,
And after hearing this feedback for like 2 years about, oh boy, it should be on the screen, that's when I started taking it seriously and really started looking at it through the lens of a film. And I'll tell you, the clincher for that, the ultimate feedback I ever got from this book is not not on Amazon. It's not, the feedback isn't it's not on Barnes and Noble. It was a high school senior at a high school that picked up the book and used it in their curriculum. And I was on the stage and I was talking to the students about the book after they read it. And the principal is introducing me, and then the principal says, at this point, all the students should have finished the book. They've had it for, I don't know how long, 6 weeks or whatever. And this girl in the front, she raises her hand and she says, I didn't finish it. And so the principal said, oh, did you not have enough time? And she said, well, I actually read it 3 times, but I stopped short at the last chapter. And then the principal said, well, why didn't you read it 3 times, but you never finished it? And well, why is that? And the girl said, because I didn't want to say goodbye to the characters. I felt like I was part of the crew, and that, that to me was the thing that compelled me. I remember driving home from that high school that day and saying, you know what, if a 17-year-old sees that and tells you that, especially considering I wrote it for an older generation, then there's got to be something to this.
Well, you wrote it for the 17-year-olds and us.
Yes.
Or the,
that's right.
13, 14, 15, the teenagers.
But as a writer, that's the best. Isn't that the best feedback you ever could get?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean,
I didn't want to say goodbye.
If you get someone to relate to that book and want to be friends with those characters and not say goodbye,
That's why she never finished it.
I mean,
she didn't want to know how it ended.
Yeah.
Like that spear is still in my heart right now. I can't get it out.
I don't want to know how it ends. Don't tell me how it ends just yet. Don't tell me how it ends.
Right.
So, did you take screenwriting classes?
I never did.
Okay, so
I wanted
did you learn to write a script?
So as a kid, I said that was my number one thing. But I had what was called an alternative youth. I was homeless at 14 and a half.
You're sleeping in laundromats. And different childhood than mine.
Yeah, and I was legally emancipated at 15. So I went to 4 high schools. I was in a breakdancing crew, a graffiti artist, and I went to 3 high schools in a year and a half. And, college was really difficult for me to get to. I did go to college. I went to a community college after, and I went in the Air Force and White House and did a whole bunch of other stuff. But I never had a chance to go to film school. So when I decided to write the screenplay, I had so much profound respect for screenwriting. I had to take a step back, and I spent 6 months plus getting really smart about screenwriting. I studied movies, screenplays, pitch decks. I watched movies without the sound on, so you could see the camera direction.
I do that.
Without, yeah, I like and then I did all of that for like 6 months before I hit the first key on the keyboard.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're really a student of real life.
Yeah.
And I totally respect and feel that so many people I know go to college, spend a lot of money to do these things and learn these processes, which is awesome.
Fine. Yeah.
Because you're always going to learn not just from a book, but from your teachers and your professors, but like taking the initiative to go to a library and do things on your own to really learn. I mean, it's hard because you don't have people to ask. There's not a professor to say, hey, I got a question on this. And, I found myself struggling with that as I was writing. And I mean, when it came to my, 3rd book, that's when I started joining these writers groups because I felt so alone and alienated.
Yes.
And like I was losing my mind because I'm spending many nights talking to these characters in my head.
Yes.
And, finally going into these writers groups, finding out that this is the normal process that a lot go through. But everyone's process is different. Yeah. But it really does help. And for me, learning how to write, a screenplay, I mean, I did take a few online classes, like, a master class with Aaron Sorkins.
Sure.
Went to the library, read a lot, studied a lot of scripts, watched the movies, watched them, with the stage directions. I talk theater-ish. Yep. And then, even doing just dialogue, reading the dialogue to see how, and of course, the television, whatever, screws up our words, but it still helped to show me how scripts are broken down.
Absolutely. It's a whole different
and
writing.
Dialogue is so much different than writing a novel, because in a novel you can describe things.
It's for me, that was the number one challenge.
Yeah.
People had said to me, oh, well, you already have the story, you already have the book, isn't it easy to adapt? And I said, well, it has its own unique challenges, especially as a novel, because, like you said, in a novel, you have the luxury of, especially first person, you have the protagonist thinking.
Yeah.
The
You can hear them thinking. You can see their
observing.
Yep.
Right? That's not always going to fly in a movie. So that was one of the things that I learned very quickly. So when I took the screenplay on, one of the things that I had to do was every time there was inner dialogue, inner thinking, those types of observations, I had to look at each situation through a couple lenses. Number one, is this important?
Yeah.
For the story?
Yeah. Does it move it forward?
Are you going
to address it?
Right. In a film, it was for the book, but for the film. If no, then delete it. If yes, okay. Now what do I want to do about this? So, with that inner dialogue, do I create a new scene that doesn't exist in the novel? Do I take it on as a flashback? Right? Especially if it's thinking about the past.
Yeah.
And then you also have an opportunity to use narration. And when I was talking to other screenwriters and other authors who were a little younger than me, and oh, no, stay away from narration. You got to stay away. That's a crutch. You don't need it if you're using too much of it. And I looked at my list of top 20 movies, and almost half of them had narration.
So that's your call.
So I said, yeah, you know what? I'm using it.
Well, look at the Wonder Years and The Office.
Of course. I used it sparingly.
Yeah.
Not as a crutch, but I do think it added a lot of value to the film.
So let me ask you this, as kind of screenwriter to screenwriter, which is kind of weird for me to say. But when you're writing a script, I came to find that worrying about say stage direction. I also do plays, but camera footage and all that. I had to get rid of all that.
Yeah.
Because I realized after talking to other writers and stuff, let the sort of professionals, work on that, because a lot of that's done in editing, and they make the call on that, because, I had a scene where it's it happened, a party's going on in the house, and the camera, I want to zoom down the street, so you see the street, zooming in, see the front window, see the people partying, and now you're in the party.
Yeah.
But it's how much of that has to be written in the script for direction,
So the way I think about it is, so what I have is a what's called a spec script. So the spec script is it has very minimal direction. Yep. Okay. It includes some basic elements like fade to black, those kinds of
interior
things.
Coffee shop.
That's right.
Yeah.
But as far as the rest of it, that's ultimately director's discretion. So and also, when you're writing a script with the hope of a producer picking it up or a director picking it up, a spec script is I think a better vehicle for it, because it's much more focused on just the story.
Yeah.
And if it goes to the next level, that's when that spec script becomes something more comprehensive. So there are different iterations.
So you've actually started filming.
Well, yes and no.
I'm going to just flip this for a minute, because I did mention how you wrote a poetry collection.
Yes.
Your book, the Punk Rock Soul. You have a great poem in there called Lucky Day.
Yes.
Lucky Day became a song.
Yes.
And then you shot it as a video.
Yeah, short film and video.
So I feel like as doing that would be a short film.
Oh yeah.
So it's walk us a little bit, through that process, because then I want to relate to how it walks you through the process of, doing a movie for a book.
Absolutely. So one of the things I talk about a lot with aspiring writers and poets is so just by doing something, saying yes, and getting it done and putting it out into the universe, that in itself can create opportunities that you're not even aware of yet. Okay. Including connections with new people that you haven't met before, new friendships, mentors, etc. Anyway, with Lucky Day, I was driving home from work, stressful day, and that old Mr. Mr. song came on from 1985, Kiri. And there's a little line in Kiri. It says, "When I was young, I thought of growing old and what my life would mean to me. And I don't know why, but that night I wrote Lucky Day in like an hour and a half. I was mentoring a young man in the Air Force Reserve, which I was in the Air Force for a long time. And he was an aspiring hip-hop artist. And he was having trouble finishing a song. Like he couldn't finish. He had all these false starts. And so I said, Andrew,
Musically, he said.
Musically, right.
Yep.
So I said, Andrew, I'm going to give you Lucky Day. It's a gift. You can have it. So I want you to round it out, take the edges off, add a chorus. And I said, if you do that as an incentive, I'll help get you recorded.
Wow.
And so he did, and he did a brilliant job, and it was awesome. And we got him in a studio, and he recorded it. And then a friend of mine who has a cinematography, he's a cinematographer and a producer, he wanted to get some muscle memory in doing like short films. So we used the concept of Lucky Day, which is a young man meets himself 50 years older. Cool. That's the whole concept. He's a teenager, he meets himself 50 years older. So we used that story and we created a script. And then we had college theater majors.
Oh, that's awesome.
We had some veteran actors in it, and we filmed up in Northampton. And I tell you what, it was, it was 2 days of filming for 8 minutes of video, but it was time well spent and just so rewarding.
And did you do the editing for it?
I didn't. No. Yeah. I just wrote it. I wrote the script.
You think like 8 hours of filming, whittled down to 8 minutes is,
It was amazing.
Huge.
But that's the whole thing. Starts with a poem, actually turned into a poster, turned into a song, and then turned into a film. Writers need to know that, right? Yeah. Your idea doesn't have to be contained into one thing.
And I think that it evolves almost naturally because, I don't want to speak on behalf of all writers, but, when you have that, okay, I have that story and I need to write it down, I need to get it out. They're not thinking about where it's going to go or what it's going to be. Yeah. You just need to get it out.
Even if you had some ideas, chances are when the thing actually gets out there, it changes. So like when ROCKIT CREW came out, I had no idea that a British audience would like it. But it found an audience in the UK.
That's amazing.
And now I have friends. I have DJ friends now in Ireland and England who I didn't know before, and it's created all these great opportunities. So now it has an international audience. In my wildest dreams, I never would have anticipated that.
And that's not just from the book, but it's also from recording an audiobook.
That's right.
And from doing the Kindle, but also for doing like a little short on it.
That's right.
So that's where is the short released?
Well, it's sort of fragmented. It's not out there right now anymore. It was more of an experiment.
Okay, so you're working towards.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's so much more I could talk to you about, obviously, because your life has transformed in so many ways. You've had such a vast wealth and poverty of life, from living on the streets to, working in the White House to all of a sudden, here back in New England, written a book, doing a music video. I mean,
no, it's been a great journey, and I owe it all to good friends, little faith, and saying yes to opportunities.
Yeah, and the opportunities, like you said, that come from the book. You do speaking engagements.
Yes.
And, schools are kind of requiring this as reading because, it's important to know our history. And, this is our history, personal history.
Well,
but, it's for, like, my children, this is really history to them. It seems so foreign. But, I mean, it's so great. So, ROCKIT CREW, tell the audience where they can find your book, where they can find more information about you.
So, ROCKIT CREW is available globally. All the predictable places, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can order it on Target. It's Walmart, all of that. It's also available on Audible. And the actor that transformed these pages into the audio story did an amazing
How did you find him? Did you find him through Audible?
Through Audible.
Okay. Yeah, because I've been looking into doing Audible for my books, and I see that you can kind of listen to certain voices and, select someone, or you can do it yourself.
Awesome.
I've started to do it myself, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
We'll
left that
see.
to the experts, and he actually has voices, unique voices for all the
Oh, I
characters.
love that.
It's incredible.
Oh,
Yeah.
I really like
love
that
it.
a
Yeah.
lot. Well, Shane, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on to yWrite. This has been super informative for me. I know the audience has definitely gotten something out of this, so I want to say thank you. I
Absolutely.
hope you'll come back on and update
Absolutely.
us on what's going on with yWrite.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate coming on to the show. I love what you're doing for the writing community, and especially the aspiring writers. I always say you never need permission to tell your story. You don't need to ask anyone's permission.
Yep.
To tell your story, so just do it.
Yeah, yeah.
You
And
know?
don't be hesitant to ask another writer how they started, because
That's right.
we do like talking about our journey.
Yes.
And, our journeys can help you. So, everyone has a unique perspective on how they write. So learning about all these different ways to do it is awesome.
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you, Shane. Thank you to Studio 954 for letting us have the time here in the studio. And I want to thank you, the audience, for tuning in to yWrite each week to learn new things about, writing. So this is a time in the program. Every episode, I like to give you a writing prompt to start at home. So pick up your pen and your paper and set your alarm. And today I'm going to make it maybe a little easy for you, because I'm going to let you use your iPhone or your computer. And what I want you to do is Google, the top 10 songs when you were a teenager. Write down those top 10 songs and then maybe pick one of them and start writing a memory from it. Maybe, you'll talk about what that song means to you. Maybe you'll talk about the first time you heard it or the concert you went to, you heard it. Who knows? Maybe it's the song you got your first kiss on. So share that story, and until next time, we will see you. So thank you for joining yWrite. Bye-bye.